Thank you very much, and thank you to the organizing committee for inviting me to this very beautiful place. I love the climate here. Which one do I press? This one, yes. These are my disclosures. I come from the National University Hospital of Copenhagen. It's a large hospital, and I'm in the heart center, and in the electrophysiology department in the heart center, and you can see we do a lot of ICD, and a lot of them are CRTDs, not so many pacemakers. We do box exchange, and we also do all sort of lead removals, laser and mechanical sheets, as you have been shown in the previous speakers. This is what I'm going to talk about. It's the Cameron subcutaneous ICD system, and here you see the specifications. As you can see, it is fairly large, and it is also, it's double of a small modern ICD in 2012. It lasts about 5 years. The lead is very special because it is very, very strong. It cannot break, and you cannot pull it apart. You can just, if you get a lead in your hand, not the one you're going to implant in a patient, but a demonstration lead, you can try and pull it, and it's very, very tough. The position of the system, as you can see, the can is put in mid-axillary. The coil has 2 sensor electrodes. Is there a pointer somewhere? Well, you can see that's the 2 sensor electrodes, A and B. And it goes, oh, great, thanks. Here, it's normally put at the left sternal border. Actually, it's a little bit historical reasons because it was never tried out on the right sternal border. But in some cases, it's very nice to put it on the right sternal border. And maybe you should just do that. I don't know, but it's an idea. As you can see, there are 3 different sense vectors. The one here between the can and the electrode down here. The second one here between the can and the tip electrode. And the alternative between just over here, the one and one here. That means you have different sense vectors. You can choose the best one of them. This is how the sensing looked compared with the surface ECG at the top, and compared with the intracardiac, the one you see normal with an endocardial ICD. And you can see that the ECG here looks very similar to the normal surface ECG. And you can understand when you see this that actually the discriminating in the ICD is very good. There's a pre-operative screening tool that you definitely have to use. And it's very simple. You put electrodes on the patient on the sites where you would have the definite electrodes, here, and where the can is positioned. And then you just put it onto a normal electrocardiographic machine and runs out the paper. You do it both with the patient lying and with the patient either sitting or standing. And then the idea is that the R wave should be in one of these small figures as close to the top up here as possible. And then you should still be able to house the T wave inside this figure here. And from that you can see which one of the different vectors would be the best one, or if there isn't one at all. Actually, I remember the first patient we wanted to give a Cameron ICD. We couldn't do it because the T waves were very, very big, and it was impossible so you have to face that in a few patients you won't be able to give this special ICD. Also, you can, if you don't get so good measures, you can try on the right side instead. And sometimes you get some very beautiful ECGs from when you just move the electrodes to the right sternal border instead of the left. And if you're in doubt, you can let the patient exercise a little bit and see if the T waves grow bigger in that way. Because if the T waves are too big, you will have double sensing and the patient will get shocked. We use fluoro to define the optimal position of the can. It was especially in the FDA trials in the United States that they wanted to be sure that it could be implanted without X-ray totally. I think that's nonsense really, because it's such a little amount of X-ray that you use. I mean, you just use less than 1 minute of fluoro. That gives perhaps 2 grays in total. And you just, before you put on the steroid draping, you just take something and you fixate the can where you think it should be, and you fixate the electrode where you think it should be, and then you look in fluoro and see if you have a nice portion of the heart between the coil here and the can out here. And you can see in this particular patient, we chose the right side of the sternal border because it was better there. You have to ensure careful hemostasis in the pockets very much. We always use electrocoagulation. We use a product called D-Stat. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's thrombin. In the formula we use it, it comes for percutaneous closure of pseudoaneurysms in the groin. There's also some bandages, which is, but for this it's a mixture, and we just put it in the pocket just before the device goes in. Also, sometimes we use what is called QuikClot. It's an American invention for battle wounds, I think. It's a sort of textile which is inhibited in kaolin, and it gives a very good hemostasis. And then you take it out before you put in the device. It's X-ray marked, so you don't forget to take it out. We use a non-absorbable suture for the skin closure in the pocket, because, I mean, it is a place where there's some fraction because movement of the arm, and we think it's better. We haven't had any infections at all in our experience, so we go on with what we started doing. You have to we always test this ICD before we wake up the patient. We do it during general anesthesia. And of course, the patient, when you are going in the left mid-axillary, you have to have the arm out here like this. And you have to tell the staff in the room that when you initiate ventricular fibrillation, you do it with 50 hertz. It's quite alarming what happens with the arm, and you really have to fix it a bit in order to keep sterile conditions. And the first time people look at it, they get a little bit, oof, is this really? But it works very well. This is initiation. This is a VFib, and you can see that it takes quite a long time if you are used to a very modern ICD. But if you go back 5 or 6 years, I mean, that was how long it took before conversion. It's just that nowadays we get it in 6 seconds, and we are so used to it. So we stand there saying, oh, what's happening here? But nothing to worry about, and it works very fine. It can give some post-conversion pacing in a sort of it's a subcutaneous pacing, and it's like we see in the emergency situations, and it can give, just the first 30 seconds. This is an example of, here it's loading up, and then it's aborting the shock because the patient converts to sinus rhythm. And it has what's called extended initial detection, because the ICD learns that these patients have some self-limiting tachycardia, so it goes on with a little more extended detection in order not to shock more than necessary. Does this system at all work? Yes, it does. There are the registration studies from Europe and for FDA approval. It was late summer, the FDA approval came. There has been some studies. There's this called the START study, where you compared arrhythmia detection performance between this ICD and the three different transvenous ICD systems, and it's called the START study. It's done in a workbench study, it's not in patients, and it shows that the SICD is absolutely as good as the others, and can match the best one, actually. Then we are going on with a database for the SICD. It's called the Effortless Registry, and it's an ongoing registry where the aim is 1,000 patients followed for 5 years. It started February last year, and it was presented at the CardioStim last year, and there'll be some new presentations on the HIs, I think. You can see the different countries participating in this registry, and just this week it's 500 patients, 499 to be exactly. Also, there is a study ongoing that's called the Praetorian study, where you randomized patients for primary prevention with no contraindications to SICD. That means that they don't have pacing need, to either the SICD or an endocardial ICD. It was from the beginning thought to be a pure Dutch study, but now they have, and it has been reported in American Heart Journal, just the study set up, but now it has been extended to other countries. We are some centers in Denmark who are going to participate in this study, and the number of patients has been increased in order to have as good a comparison as possible, and some very good p-values. For now, in my hospital, we use this SICD as secondary or sometimes primary prevention in patients presenting with ventricular fibrillation or with a very high-risk family history. It could be different electrical diseases like long QT, short QT, Brugada, and polymorph, and ventricular tachycardia, ventricular fibrillation, where we don't nearly know. Some hypertrophic patients doesn't need to be obstructive, could just be hypertrophic cardiomyopathies. Then we use it in patients where the endocardial system is extracted due to electrode endocarditis, or as we just saw, we do extractions with either laser or mechanical. We use it and think it's very important to use this in patients with high risk for infection. I mean, we see more and more patients on hemodialysis who needs an ICD, either for primary or secondary prevention reason. And there we think that the subcutaneous system is very, very good because they are prone to get electrode endocarditis later on. And also patients with previous electrode breaking or at high risk for breaking. I mean, you see some young patients where they come with one electrode breaking, and you give them another electrode and they come back, and then you say, well, this is enough. Subcutaneous ICD is much better for you if they are very physical active. But I mean, they don't have to be specific young. It's not only an ICD for young patients. It's an ICD for all patients. Then we use it, of course, in congenital heart patients, congenital heart disease patients where you can't get a venous access to the heart, either because it's blocked by previous operations or because they are born like that. Also patients with very severe previous venous thrombosis. And then, of course, patients who will participate in a Praetorian study where we think we are going to start just after the HRS. There are some absolute contraindications. If you need pacing, you can't use this. And if you have this T-wave oversense indicated in the screening, it's not a good idea to do it. And patients who have indication for CRT, we wouldn't use this. If patient has, I mean, it's a moderate to strong contraindication if the patient has a monomorph sustained VT where ATP could be effective. But you have to bear in mind that some of the ATP actually, I mean, if the patient didn't get ATP, lots of the VTs would stop anyhow because they are not necessarily sustained. Patients who have arrhythmogenic right ventricular cardiomyopathy, we think they often have lots of VTs that can be taken by ATP. If you have small or very thin, it's not the ICD for you. It wouldn't look very nice. And in children, we don't use it. I know it can be, but I've looked some of the pictures, and I don't think it's a fair solution for the children. If you have a patient with a well-functioning CRT pace system who needs upgrade to a CRT, you can actually put the SICD system in the same patient and it works good. And some say that patients with very old ICD patches, epicardial that was never removed, can bear some problems. We have tried in one patient and it went well, so I'm not so sure. This is just a picture showing you a patient that had a very well-functioning CRT pacing system with a very good effect, and then needed an ICD because for secondary prevention.
Dr. Vidavik, please,
and we
you
put
have
in
2 minutes in order to...
We saw this and thought that this was a very long occlusion, not suitable for ballooning or anything. So we just put in the subcutaneous ICD, and it works very fine. Also, the lead goes for all sizes of patients because, yeah, I have these two patients. The one is a man, slim man. It's a very new operation, so you can just see that there's air trapped inside the pocket still. It's an X-ray taken the same day after the operation. And this is a lady, a little younger, but weighing 3 times the weight of the man, and it's the same electrode, so it fits all sizes. It's a bit difficult to put in the very fat patients, but I mean, this I gave her. She had a cardiac arrest, and we don't know really why, but I didn't want to give her an endocardial system. It would been, from a surgical point, quite difficult because she was so fat, and I thought that if it ended up with a pneumothorax, it would be a disaster with this very, very fat lady. And you have to have some bigger operating tools when you do it, but you know, below the fat, most patients look the same. So it's just to go on and dig through it. And the ICD will sit nice, and actually she has been shocked twice since she got it, and it works fine. So, thank you. And this is just to show you how Denmark looks in spring.